John had no plans to be a hero that day. He was just passing through the jungle on an alien planet, his boots crunching softly on the moss-covered ground. His scanner was buzzing in his hand, picking up traces of rare minerals. He was alone, no soldiers, no backup. Just a man and his bag of tools, looking to earn enough credits for the week. The jungle was beautiful, but strange. Trees twisted like giant ropes. Their leaves glowed faintly, even during the day. The air was thick and warm, filled with tiny, glowing bugs that danced like stars. And yet, despite the life around him, it was silent. Too silent. John paused, wiped the sweat from his neck. He was a veteran explorer, and he trusted his gut. Something didn't feel right. That's when he heard it. A scream. It was sharp, high-pitched, and echoing through the trees like a cry for help. John froze. His heart thumped in his chest. That wasn't an animal. That wasn't a wild beast. That was a woman. He turned slowly, raising his scanner like a weapon. His other hand reached for his knife. There was no record of any life form in this sector. The maps called this jungle lifeless. Clearly, the maps were wrong. The scream came. Again, closer this time. Full of pain, full of fear. John didn't think. He ran. Through the thick vines, past giant roots, over fallen trees. He moved fast, cutting through with his blade. His breath was heavy, his boots slipping on wet moss. The trees grew closer, like they were closing in. Then, suddenly, he saw her. She was trapped in a cluster of vines hanging just above the ground. Her skin was soft blue, glowing faintly in the dim light. Her arms were scratched and bleeding. Her long white hair was tangled in the vines. Her eyes met his. They weren't angry. They weren't wild. They were full of terror and hope. She was trying to speak, but the vines were tightening around her neck. John rushed forward without thinking. "Hold on," he shouted. He slashed at the vines. Thick and green. They hissed as if alive. They moved, wrapping around his arm like snakes. But John was stronger. He pulled, cut, kicked, and finally ripped the girl free. She collapsed into his arms. She was light. So light, it felt like she might blow away with the wind. Her breathing was weak, her skin cold. He laid her gently on the ground. "Hey, you all right?" She blinked slowly. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Then, after a few seconds, she whispered a word in a language he didn't understand. He pulled out his small translator device and tapped it. "Say that again," she tried. The translator buzzed. Then a broken sentence came out. "Danger, coming, hide." John looked. Around the jungle was moving, not just the wind, the vines, the trees. Everything seemed to shift, as if they were watching. "What's coming?" he asked. She pointed with shaking fingers. John turned to see the vines she'd been trapped in, moving back into place. As if resetting, waiting for the next victim. "What the hell is this place?" he whispered. The girl grabbed his sleeve tightly, her blue fingers trembling. "Don't leave me," she said softly. The translator buzzed slowly with each word. John looked at her collar. It had a glowing red light. Alien tech. He didn't know what it was, but it looked like a tracker or maybe a control device. She wasn't just lost, she was running. He gently put her arm around his shoulder. "All right, I won't leave you." He didn't know who she was, didn't know what she was running from. But something deep inside told him. This wasn't just about one alien woman. Something was very wrong with this jungle. As he helped her walk away, the trees behind them swayed. Even though the wind had stopped and from far away, something growled. John held the alien girl close, her weak body leaning heavily against him. Her breathing was shallow, her legs dragged. But her eyes were still full of fear. The jungle around them didn't feel normal. The trees didn't just stand, they seemed to watch. The vines didn't just hang, they waited. John moved carefully, slashing away creeping roots with his knife. Every few steps, he looked over his shoulder. He didn't know what he was expecting. A beast? A machine? Another trap. But the jungle stayed quiet. Too quiet. They reached a small clearing with a fallen tree in the middle. John laid the girl down, gently, and checked her collar again. The glowing red light was still pulsing. Slow, steady, but he didn't know if that meant it was working, or warning someone. She looked at him and opened her mouth, struggling to speak. The translator on his wrist buzzed. Vines. Bite. Think. Trap. John blinked. Did you say, the vines think? She nodded, barely able to lift her head. Before he could ask more, he heard something behind him, a hiss. He spun around. Knife raised, nothing. Just a vine moving slowly through the grass. Wait, it wasn't there before. Suddenly, snapped toward him like a whip. John dodged just in time. The vine struck the ground where he had been hard enough to crack the dirt. That's not a plant, John muttered. That's a damn predator. The girl tried to sit up, pointing with panic in her eyes. More vines slithered in from the edges of the clearing. 5. 10 more. John picked her up fast. Hang on. He ran, but the jungle wasn't going to let them go so easily. Vines lashed at his legs, roots rose to trip him, and the trees bent their branches low, as if trying to block his way. It was like running through a maze that was building itself while he moved. One vine wrapped around his ankle. He fell hard. The girl slipped from his grip, landing with a painful cry. John kicked at the vine. It squeezed tighter. He reached into his belt pouch, grabbed a flare, and lit it. Whoosh! The flame burst into life. The vines recoiled. They didn't like fire. John growled. That's what I thought. He slashed the vine from his leg and scooped the girl up again. She was crying now, her soft blue cheeks stained with dirt and fear. But she still managed to whisper something. The translator buzzed. Burn. Roots. They run. John lit another flare and tossed it behind him. The jungle screamed. Not with sound, but with movement. The vines pulled back. The trees stopped shaking. It was like the whole forest winced. John took the chance. He ran faster through an archway of roots, over a stream that glowed green. Deeper into the unknown, he finally stopped near a rock wall tall and curved like a half moon. The space behind it was narrow and shaded. Seemed safe for now. He placed the girl down gently. They were both shaking. He gave her water from his bottle. She sipped it slowly. You okay now? He asked. She looked at him for a long time. Her voice was dry and cracked. You? Not like others. John raised a brow. Others. She nodded. Then, using the tip of a stick, she drew something in the dirt. A figure with a collar like hers, surrounded by tall men. Uniforms, weapons, humans. He asked. She shook her head, then pointed at the drawing again. John leaned in. One symbol on their chest looked familiar. A red star. His eyes narrowed. The Union expedition. But they left this planet years ago. Said it was uninhabitable. She gave him a look that said everything. They lied. The vines rustled nearby again. Softer this time. Listening, John picked up the stick and drew something to a ship. A beacon the way back to orbit. You trying to get home? She slowly shook her head. No home. He stared at her, silent for a moment. This wasn't just some alien girl lost in the jungle. She had escaped. Something smart. Something powerful. And now the jungle itself was trying to take her back. He stood up. Well, you've got me now, and I don't leave people behind. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled, not from footsteps, but from breathing. The vines nearby rose, like snakes ready to strike. The girl grabbed his arm with sudden strength. Run. But this time, John didn't run. He lit both his last flares and shouted, "Come get me, you overgrown weeds." The vines hesitated, and for a second, the jungle paused. John smirked. Thought so? But deep in the shadows of the trees, two glowing yellow eyes opened, watching, waiting, and the real hunt hadn't even begun. John stared into the jungle shadows. Two glowing yellow eyes blinked at him from the dark trees. Whatever it wasn't a vine. It wasn't a plant. It was alive, and it was hunting. He held the flares tighter in both hands, the smoke rising. Around him, the alien girl stood beside him, her thin arms shaking, her breathing quick and shallow. Her glowing blue skin reflected the red light of the fire, and her wide eyes stayed locked on the yellow ones. "Do you know what that thing is?" John asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she dropped to her knees, grabbed a stick, and started drawing on the soft earth, symbols, circles, arrows, a shape with many legs. A cage, flames dead. With her finger, she pointed to the symbol of the many-legged shape and then pointed toward the yellow eyes in the trees. John crouched beside her. Watching closely, "You're saying that thing in the jungle. It's what kept you prisoner." She nodded slowly. Then drew a figure like herself, wrapped in vines with the creature standing above her. "And it controls the vines." He guessed. She tapped the dirt in agreement. John's heart sank. So the jungle isn't alive by itself. It's that thing. It uses the jungle to trap people. Her hands moved quickly now. She pointed to her collar, then tapped it like she was trying to break it. Her eyes looked desperate. "Tracker," John muttered. "It's how it follows you." Suddenly, the collar blinked faster. She panicked, grabbed John's wrist. She held on tight. Her message was clear. "If we don't move now, it will find us." John pulled out his knife. "We need to remove this thing." She flinched at the blade but didn't pull away. He studied the collar. Smooth metal, no screws, no buttons. It had a small red core pulsing at the back. Cutting it wrong might kill her or alert the jungle monster faster. Damn it. "I need tools," he muttered. He checked his satchel. A plasma cutter, some wires, a small signal scrambler. Not enough. He pulled out the scrambler and pressed it against the collar. The pulsing slowed. Her body relaxed slightly. "It won't last long," he said. "But it might give us time." Then he heard it, a sound like metal dragging across stone. Far behind them, then again, closer. She grabbed his hand. Her mouth moved rapidly. The translator on his wrist buzzed. It eats sound. No noise, no sound. Or it comes. John's breath caught. He looked around for a place to hide. The rock wall behind them had a gap. A small space, just big enough for two. He led her into the tight opening, crouched low, and wrapped one arm around her to keep her steady. They waited, still, silent. The jungle seemed to stop breathing. Even the wind didn't blow. Then, something crawled into the clearing. It wasn't huge, but it felt heavy. Wrong. It walked on 6 insect-like legs, each step gentle but terrifying. Its body was dark, covered in shiny armor that looked like melted obsidian. From its back, tiny feelers extended and touched the trees around it. It sniffed the air. It didn't have a face, just a flat mask with holes. No eyes, but it moved with purpose. It stopped near the drawings in the dirt. John held his breath. The alien girl trembled slightly in his arms, but she didn't make a sound. The creature lowered its body. Its feelers touched the symbols she'd drawn. Slowly, they erased them, as if wiping away a secret. Then it turned its head toward their hiding place. It began moving slowly step by step. John's grip on the flare tightened. One wrong move, and they were dead. The creature paused. Its head twitched. Suddenly, it turned and raced back into the jungle, moving like a shadow swallowed by trees. They didn't move for another full minute. Then John let out the breath he had been holding. "Close," he whispered. The girl nodded, wiping silent tears from her cheeks. John stood and helped her up. "Okay, we can't keep hiding. We need to find high ground. Send a signal. You understand?" She hesitated, then nodded, but she touched her chest, then pointed back toward the jungle. He didn't understand. She drew again in the dirt her figure. And another, smaller one beside her. A child. John's voice went dry. "You're looking for someone?" She nodded. "Your child." Her eyes filled with tears. John looked back toward the trees. Toward where the monster had gone. "You escaped," he said, "but your child didn't." She nodded again. This wasn't just a rescue anymore. It was a mission. A mother had risked her life. Run through a living jungle, been trapped in vines and still. She hadn't left without a reason. John clenched his fists. "Then we're going back," he said. "We're getting your kid. We're burning that thing to the ground." She looked at him, shocked. Then, slowly, a small smile touched her lips. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. John had faced danger before. He'd been a soldier, a scout, even a deep space miner. But nothing in his past prepared him for this: a jungle that hunted you if you made a sound, and a silent alien creature that ruled the trees like a ghost. And now, he wasn't just running anymore. He was going back in for the alien girl's child. She followed behind him, her movements quiet but urgent. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Every step she took back into the thick, glowing forest told John just how serious this was. Her child was still alive, still trapped, still out there. With that thing, John held his scrambler tight in one hand, his flare in the other. His knife was strapped to his leg, and every few minutes he marked a tree with a glowing chalk just in case. They had to escape fast. The jungle had changed. It wasn't just alive, it was listening. Even the birds had stopped calling. No buzzing insects, no rustling wind, only silence. Deep, thick, heavy silence, the kind that made your ears ring. John stepped carefully, placing each boot with precision. Every snap of a twig underfoot made his heart beat faster. But the girl walked like she was made for this place, soft, smooth, and careful. Her bare feet made no sound at all. She stopped suddenly, held up a hand. John froze. She pointed ahead, toward a strange, raised patch of ground, a circle of moss-covered dirt, with several thick vines coiled around a central tree. It didn't look like much until John noticed the bones, dozens of them, cracked, clean, polished white by time. A feeding spota nest, or maybe a prison. The alien girl moved toward it slowly. Her glowing skin barely reflected the soft light around them. John followed with care, scanning for motion, for breathing, for anything. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet breathed. The moss shifted. Slightly, a pulse ran through the dirt like a heartbeat. John gripped her arm and whispered, "Step back. It's a trap." But before she could move, a thin vine slithered from under the moss and touched her ankle. She didn't scream. She didn't even flinch. She looked at Jonan, pointed deeper into the vine circle. He followed her gaze. There, wrapped in smaller vines, hidden beneath layers of leaves and branches, was a small figure. Tiny dot still, John's single quotes, us heart dropped. The child, she was alive, but barely. Her chest moved weakly. The vines had cocooned her like a sleeping bug. Her face? Looked like her mother's soft blue skin, glowing faintly. And she wasn't alone, just a few steps away. The predator waited. Crouched in the shadows, movie silent. Watching, it didn't attack. It didn't attack. It didn't roar. It simply waited. John realized its trick. It wanted them both inside. It's a circle before striking. A perfect trap. "Stay here," John whispered. "Don't move." He stepped forward slowly, pulling out the flare from his belt. Every second felt like walking. Into death, the creature didn't move. John lit the flare. Whoosh. The red flame burst to life. The jungle hissed. The predator raised its head, and that's when John made his move. He threw the flare straight at the vines holding the child. Boom. Fire exploded. The vines burned, releasing smoke and sparks. The child dropped free, but the predator screamed, a low, unnatural sound. Like metal grinding against bone, it lunged forward too fast. John rolled, grabbing the child in his arms. The heat from the fire singed his jacket. The predator struck the dirt where he had stood seconds ago. Its claws were like knives. John didn't look back. He ran. The girl met him halfway and took her child from his arms. She held her close, crying without a sound. John turned. The predator was furious. It rushed toward them. Vines snapping all around. John lit his second flare, then threw it at the predator's face. Direct hit. The creature screamed again, staggering back. John grabbed the girl's hand and shouted, "Now, run." They ran together, mother, child, and human, through burning trees, through angry vines, through a jungle that had become a battlefield. Behind them, the predator roared one last time. Then silence returned. True silence, the kind that didn't hunt anymore because it had lost. They stopped under a wide stone archway, far from the nest. The girl collapsed to her knees, hugging her child tightly. John fell to the ground beside them, gasping for breath. He looked at the girl. She looked at him, for the first time. She spoke without fear. "Thank you," the translator buzzed. Her voice cracked, but her eyes said more than words ever could. John smiled. "We're not done yet," he said. "We still have to get out of this jungle." But in that moment, with the child safe in her mother's arms and the predator driven back into the shadows, something changed. They weren't just strangers anymore. They were survivors. Together, her eyes said everything. John didn't know how long they had been walking. After escaping the predator, the jungle felt calmer. Not safe, but still. The vines no longer moved like they had minds. The wind returned. Birds began chirping again in the far distance. But John didn't relax. He knew better. He carried the alien child in his arms. The little one was breathing now, but weak. Her skin was colder than before. The mother, still nameless to him, walked beside them with heavy eyes and silent steps. They needed shelter, and soon as they pushed through thick trees, John spotted something up ahead, gray rock rising from the jungle floor. Not just a rock, a cliff, and at its base, a large opening. Dark and wide. A cave. He pointed there. "We'll rest inside." The alien woman nodded slowly. They entered the cave carefully. John used his wrist light to guide the way. The walls were rough, and dry, cool air touched their skin. It was deep, but not endless. Just enough space to hide, breathe, and stay out of the jungle's reach. John placed the child gently on a soft patch of moss. The mother sat beside her, brushing her white hair back with shaking fingers. Her eyes filled with silent tears. John took out a small medkit and offered it to her. She didn't know how to use it, so he helped cleaning the child's scratches. Checking her pulse, "She's going to make it," he whispered. The mother looked at him and smiled. It was the first real smile he had seen from her, but the smile faded quickly. John noticed it too. Something wasn't right with the cave. He stood up slowly and shined his light toward the far wall. His heart stopped. Bones. Dozens, maybe. Hundreds stacked, scattered, crushed. Human, alien, small, large. A skull rolled out from the shadows, marked with the symbol of the old Terran research team. John knelt beside it, his fingers tracing the faded red logo. No way. 8 years ago, a human team came to this planet and vanished without a trace. The report said they were lost in a storm. They weren't. They were fed to something. The mother walked closer and pointed to the bones. She drew a circle in the air with her fingers, then crossed it with a quick slash. The translator buzzed. Bad place. Feeding cave. Trap. John's voice turned cold. That predator. It's been bringing victims here. She nodded. He looked around again. The bones were arranged strangely. Not just random. Not just tossed. Some were stacked like towers. Others were set in circles. And one large section of the wall had drawings. Not ancient ones, but scratched in. With claws scenes, figures walking into vines. Figures wrapped in thorns. Figures kneeling before a large creature with many legs. One drawing stopped him cold. It showed a man, standing between the creature and a woman holding a child. Him, it was him. Drawn in advance, his chest tightened. This thing doesn't just hunt, it remembers. The alien girl stepped forward and touched the picture. She pointed to the man, then to John. You, last. He understood the creature wasn't just hunting randomly. It had been watching, choosing, and now. John was its final target, its last meal. He backed away from the wall and pulled the mother and child closer. We can't stay here. But then, they heard the sound. Click, click, click. Slow, heavy, sharp. From the entrance of the cave, the predator was back, and it had blocked the only way out. John grabbed his knife. One flare left. No firebombs. No plasma tools. Just instinct. He whispered, "Stay behind me, no matter what." The mother pressed her child against her chest and crouched low. The predator stepped inside. Its body filled the cave entrance. The yellow lights on its head blinked slowly. Its legs scraped against the stone floor. John stood tall, even though fear pounded in his chest. "I'm not running this time," he said. The creature growled, then lunged. John rolled to the side and slashed at one of its legs. Sparks flew, but it didn't stop. He dodged again, pulling the flare from his belt. He lit it. Foosh. The red flame roared to life. He threw it at the creature's chest. Fire kissed its skin. It shrieked and stumbled. John grabbed a broken bone from the grounded, sharp femur and plunged it deep into the creature's side. The beast screamed louder. It swiped wildly. A claw sliced across John's arm, sending blood down his sleeve. But he didn't stop. He struck again and again until the creature staggered backward toward the cave wall. John spotted something, a crack in the rocks behind it, a narrow tunnel. He turned and shouted, "Go! Now!" The mother ran, carrying the child into the small passage. The predator roared. One last time, man lunged at John, but John ducked, rolled, and followed the mother through the crack just in time. Behind them, the cave trembled. Stones fell, the entrance collapsed. The predator was trapped, and they were free. For now, the narrow tunnel felt endless. John crawled through the tight space, his injured arm burning with pain. Behind him, the alien mother carried her child close to her chest. They moved slowly, carefully, each breath short and quiet. Finally, they reached the end. The tunnel opened into a quiet glade, surrounded by thick trees and soft grass. A small pool of clear water sparkled in the center. Strange flowers glowed faintly around the edge. The stars above peeked through the trees, safe for now. John collapsed beside the pool, breathing heavily. His arm was still bleeding, but he didn't care. They had survived the cave, survived the predator. Again that the alien woman laid her child down gently on the grass, brushing her hair back. The child stirred, then opened her eyes, still weak, but alive. John smiled. "You did it," he whispered to the mother. "You got her back." She didn't speak. Instead, she sat across from him and stared at his wound, at his tired face, at the blood dripping from his wrist. Her hand moved slowly. She reached toward his belt. John flinched. She stopped, then pulled her hand back. "I'm sorry," he said, raising a hand. "Force of habit." She pointed at his medkit. John blinked. "Oh." He chuckled awkwardly and handed it to her. She began treating his wound, her fingers surprisingly gentle. He watched her carefully. The collar around her neck was still glowing faint, but steady. That strange red light had never turned off. "What is that thing?" he finally asked. She paused, then reached up and tapped it twice. The translator buzzed. "Chain. Prison." John frowned. "It's how they kept you controlled." She nodded, then did something unexpected. She turned her back to him and pulled her long hair aside. John's breath caught. Burn marks, scars, some old, some fresh. The collar hadn't just tracked her, it had punished her. "Torture," he muttered. "They used this to shock you." She didn't reply, but she didn't. Need to. John stood up and examined the collar again. The scrambler was still slowing the signal, but not stopping it. At any moment, the thing in the jungle lore, whoever controlled it, might find her again. "I need to get this off," he said. He pulled out a small tool from his belt. It sparked weakly. His energy cell was low, but maybe just enough. "Hold still," he whispered. She closed her eyes. John placed the tool against the side of the collar. It hissed, then clicked. Smoke rose. Sparks danced along the edge, then dash, snap. The collar popped open and fell into the grass. She opened her eyes in shock. Her hands reached up to her bare neck. She looked at John like she wasn't sure if she was dreaming. "You're free," he said quietly. A long silence followed. Then, slowly, tears rolled down her cheeks. She didn't sob, didn't scream, just wept quietly. Her head bowed. She had probably worn that chain for years. John looked at the collar in the grass. It was still glowing. He crushed it with his boot. Crack. The light went out. Behind them, the jungle shifted. Birds flew into the sky. Trees are USTL, as if something far away had felt the change. John turned to her. "What were you to them?" he asked. "Why would they keep you prisoner?" She looked at the stars, then drew in the dirt with her finger. A symbol, a tall tower, then a small figure inside it. John frowned. "You were a captive? Inside a facility?" She nodded. She drew another symbol, a circle with many legs. The predator, then a small spark drawn between the two. John's eyes narrowed. "Wait, they didn't capture you from the predator. They gave you to it." She looked down, ashamed. "No, don't do that," he said. "That's not your fault." She shook her head slowly, then reached for a hidden pocket in her cloth. Belt pulled out a small metal disc. She placed it in his hand. John turned it over. It was an identification tag, not alien. Human. His eyes widened. This belonged to a human scientist. He flipped it open. A name, Dr. Malik Voss, xenobiologist, Union Research Division. She pointed to it. Then to her chest. John whispered, "You were part of their experiment. She nodded once, then pointed to the child. She, too. A slow, sad nod. John stared at the ground, his fists tightening. They bred you, raised your child, tracked you, used that predator as a keeper. The truth was worse than he imagined. It wasn't just a monster in the jungle. It was a design, a cage, and they'd been thrown into it like test animals. No more, John growled. No more chains, no more hiding. He stood up and looked to the stars. There's an old beacon tower northwest of here. If I can reach it, I can call down my ship. She looked at him, eyes wide. He pointed at her and the child. I'm taking both of you off this planet. For the first time, her lips moved with strength. She whispered a word. The translator buzzed. Family? John smiled. Yeah, he said. Something like that. End of part 6. Smoke drifted into the sky, rising above the trees like a ghost finally set free. John stood at the edge of the ridge, staring down at the twisted body of the fallen predator. It wasn't moving anymore. Its glowing eyes had dimmed. Sparks crackled from its cracked shell. The jungle, which once seemed alive and listening, was now silent in a different way. Not the silence of danger, but the silence of peace. The alien mother stood beside him, holding her child close to her chest. Her collar was gone. Her body, once weak and trembling, now stood straight, tall, and proud. She was no longer a prisoner. John checked the beacon again. The green light blinked every few seconds. The signal had gone through. Help was coming. But help always came late. The real saving, he realized, had already happened when he chose not to walk away from a scream in the jungle. He turned to her. When the ship arrives, they'll scan us, ask questions. You sure you want to come with me? She looked at her child, then at him, and nodded. We want to live, not hide. The translator said in her calm, quiet voice. John smiled. Then, I'll protect both of you. That's a promise. The sun started to rise beyond the treetops, casting golden light across the jungle floor. For the first time, the forest looked normal. Just trees and vines and shadows, without the keeper. The jungle was only jungle, but peace always had a price, as they packed up to wait for the dropship. The mother sat beside John and pulled something from her robes. Aha! Memory crystal. She handed it to him with a soft expression. John pressed it to his scanner. Images flickered. Dozens of cages. Aliens of different species, all colored. Humans in lab. Codes giving orders to the keeper. A younger version of the woman, standing still as electrodes shocked her into obedience. Then an escape. A storm. Screams. Child pulled from her arms. John's hands trembled. This was not just one story. This was part of something bigger, darker, something hidden. The research team hadn't just vanished. They had covered it up. They'll come back, he muttered. They'll want their test subjects again. The woman took his hand gently. Then we tell the truth, she said. John looked at the child. She was awake now, sitting beside her mother, playing with a broken flower. Not afraid anymore. She looked up at John and smiled shyly. He smiled back. Then a loud hum filled the air. The drop-ship. It pierced the sky like a silver arrow, slow and steady. The wind blew the grass as it descended. John stood, waving his arm. A red light blinked on the ship's underside. They had seen him as the ship landed. The door hissed open. 2 rescue officers stepped out as wide at the sight of him. The mother and the child. The lead officer raised a brow. You're the miner who went missing. Where's the rest of your crew? John shook his head. Didn't have one. Came alone. The officer's gaze shifted to the woman and child. Who are they? John glanced at them, then back. My family? The officer looked confused. Your? John stepped forward. I'll explain everything on the way. But if anyone comes looking for her or that jungle, they need to be stopped. The officer frowned, sensing the weight in his voice. All right, let's get you out of here first. John helped the woman and child aboard as the ramp closed behind them. The jungle grew smaller below, and somewhere deep in that green sea of trees, other secrets still slept. But one predator was gone, and one man had changed everything because he listened to a scream that wasn't his and acted when no one else would. Months later, in a quiet home on a new colony world, John sat on the porch with the alien child asleep in his lap. The stars above twinkled softly inside. The woman was cooking. Her laughter floated through the window. She had learned to speak better now. So had the girl. John had given them names, and they had given him a purpose. He had filed a report. The government tried to bury it, but someone leaked the memory crystal. People began to ask questions. Investigations started, and somewhere in the stars, the people who had used her were getting nervous. But John didn't worry, because now he wasn't alone. The jungle had taken many lives, but it had also returned. Something rare, a reason to fight, a family to protect, and a truth that no one could chain again.